Wanted to give a quick little discussion about the different ways you can start a flow on a page and the subtle but important differences in how the flow behaves depending on how you start it. So we've got a flow here, and we actually are going to run this flow using three different technologies. Um, the most obvious one is this right here. Uh, we've got it as part of a Lightning Flow component, which is a container you can put on a Lightning page like this one, and we can run this flow. And all this flow does is it provides a button, and you click on this button, and it's going to navigate to a contact. So I click on the button and it navigates to a contact. That's all it does. This button is a flow screen component called navigation button that you can install, and it really exists solely to do that kind of little navigation-y thing. But navigation is a tricky thing, it turns out, because not all uh, uh, avenues of Salesforce technology support the underlying force event that makes that possible. So for example, if I run that same flow by clicking on this button, which says Run Flow via Button Tech, and I'll explain that in a minute, that same flow that comes up and the Click Me button appears, but I can click all I want. No navigation works because navigation events do not work uh, when flows are run via button technology. On the other hand, I've got an almost identical button here which says Run Flow via Action technology. And when I click on this, I get a third visual behavior. I get a modal pop-up dialog. And when I click on it this time, it works. So three different visual appearances, two different approaches that actually cause navigation to work, and one that doesn't. So let's understand this a little better, particularly if you're relatively newer to Salesforce. The distinction between button technology and action technology might be pretty obscure, confusing, or absolutely baffling. And at the heart of it is the fact that here at Salesforce, we do not want to force people to stop using stuff the way they're used to using it. So when you have an older technology gets replaced by a newer technology, we usually allow them to be used side by side. And that is what you've got here. You've got an older technology involving custom buttons and a newer technology involving quick actions. And although they look the same, they have some differences in behavior. So let's explore that. One of the best ways to explore stuff and find out about stuff when you're looking at a Lightning page and trying to figure out what's going on is go up to the cog and select Edit Page, and let's go into App Builder. And then we can click on this particular rectangle and try and figure out how we can change those buttons and where they're coming from. So this is called, I clicked on it, it's called a highlights panel, and it is aggregating data. They pretty much read our minds, anticipated we want to know how it works. And they have this nice little pop-up here. So the green field data comes from the account's compact layout, whichever one is selected. And these buttons are actions that come from a page layout. Okay, so that's what we're interested in. We're interested in these actions. We're going to go down here, and it says you set the actions using page layouts, and here's the one they're showing us right now. That's the one we're using, so let's go take a look. So now we're in the Object Manager, and this probably looks pretty familiar, the layout environment. Now here are the two buttons, Run Flow via Button Tech and Run Flow via Action Tech. And let me take those off. And just so we can go and sort of start from scratch here. Now I'm going to go to Mobile and Lightning Actions. And here are my two actions. Now, interestingly, if I hover over them, notice this subtle difference. Run Flow via Action is action type quick action. Run Flow via Button is action type custom button. So that's why they're behaving differently. They are different action types, even though they look like identical buttons. So let's put this back. And so the difference, if both the custom buttons and quick actions are actually configured and managed in the same place, which is called buttons, links, and actions. And you can see over here, there's a button to create a new action and a button to create a new button, which is confusing in some ways to me because actions are often used and exposed as buttons themselves. So, and that's in fact what we were just looking at. So the action ends up looking like a button, and the button ends up looking like a button, which probably gave some product marketers a lot of headaches when they were trying to come up with names for this stuff. So let's scroll down and look at our two different buttons here. If we go and we click on the custom button and hit edit, we are in the original custom button interface. This has been around as long as I've been using Salesforce, which goes back to 2003. And the lot of power here. Custom buttons have provided a ton of functionality over the years, and that's one of the reasons why they're still around. But they are not the recommended way for creating button functionality in Salesforce, and it's because of subtle things like that error I showed you where it would not navigate when we clicked on it. If we go back to remind you, if we click on this, this button does not navigate. It doesn't navigate because the Lightning technology that underlies that navigation event just doesn't work with the old custom button technology. So, although this is perfectly good technology, if you're using Lightning components and you're moving in a Lightning direction, it's probably better to use the quick action framework and technology. If we go to this button, we see it's a little different. It's a little simpler actually, but you're able to create a quick action that launches a flow. And that's what we did here. We have a list of flows to choose. And because we're using the action framework, the quick action technology, that when we go back here and click on the button, the Lightning components inside behave as we would expect. So keep these subtleties in mind when you're figuring out where am I going. So keep these subtle differences in mind, and just when you're deciding how to expose a flow, so keep these differences in mind when you are adding a flow to a page. We generally recommend that you either add it as a flow component so that it takes up sort of a dedicated screen area like this, or we recommend that you add it by creating a quick action using the new action button that is right here. We recommend that you not launch flows using the older custom button technology. There are a few special cases where custom buttons are the best choice. One involves when you want to pass parameters into the flow with the button. That is something that custom buttons can do, but quick actions cannot yet do. So there are some special cases where you want to use custom buttons, but in general, create actions to launch your flows, and you can see that when you do that, you will have the ability. This is a fairly recent ad. This is only in the last 9 months, but you can now go and you can add your flow and you can have it launch and behave the way you expect.